I think in God's good sovereignty, the text that we're going to look at today is very appropriate for the oddness of this season that we are in. In his book called To Change the World, author James Davidson Hunter writes about how Christians throughout history have responded to the world around it, and that there are two primary ways, even opposing ways, that Christians have reacted. The first is that Christians try to conquer the world, either through military might, think the Crusades, or political expediency, that's still happening even right now. Christians at times have desired to rule the world, to govern it with our morality, and to punish those who disagree. The other way that Christians have reacted to our world is to withdraw from it. The world is broken, it's evil, it's sinful, therefore it's reasoned. The best thing that a Christian can do is have nothing to do with it. So we don't participate in their holidays, we don't read their books, we don't watch their movies or shows. We cloister ourselves off in holy huddles and wait for Jesus to show up. Both of those strategies have been used throughout history multiple times and in multiple ways. Both methods have been massive failures across the board. James Davidson Hunter, through his research then of the eras of Christian history, presents that Christians are most faithful to Christ, they're most impactful in the world when we have what he calls faithful presence. Jesus does not call us to social revolution, nor does he call us to become a hermit. The balance is found in faithful presence in the world. We are to be in the world, but our presence there is to be marked by simple, quiet faithfulness to the Lord. An example he gives of what that could look like is the historical period when the Vikings invaded Europe and enslaved all the Christians. So what was the Christian response to that horrific season? Well, they did not seek legislative action. They did not attempt to even overthrow their captors. They were simply faithful to the Lord as slaves of the Vikings. And it was wildly successful. One of the tasks that the Vikings gave to the Christians was to educate the Viking children. Christians could read and write. They were educated. The Vikings were uneducated. So teach our kids. So the Christians did. When they taught the Viking children how to read, they used the Bible as the book to help them learn how to read. They taught grammar by teaching them the grammar of Scripture. They taught them to write by writing out Bible verses. And the result was that within 2 generations, the Vikings were completely Christianized, and the issue itself went away. Faithful presence makes a difference. So as God's kingdom people, how do we live in a world that is not defined by his kingdom values? Do we conquer it by force? Do we conquer it by politics? Do we withdraw and live in caves, whether they be real or figurative ones? So he's laid out the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, these 8 character qualities of kingdom people. Jesus now shows us how those people live in a world that is unlike them. Chapter 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. So he uses 2 distinct, glorious images to define and describe the role of a Christian living in a non-Christian world. Each of the images, salt and light, carries a positive declaration, but they also carry a negative warning. So let's take a few minutes and walk through them. First of all, salt, the declaration is transform the world. By its very nature, salt is transformative. Once it is applied, whatever it's applied to is never the same. Its chemical makeup changes. And I think that's the ultimate point that Jesus is making with this image of salt. Now, in his day, salt had far more uses that we are largely unfamiliar with in our world today. We use salt to flavor food. It was much more utilitarian in his day. For example, salt was so useful that Roman soldiers were regularly paid their wages in salt. It's where our word salary comes from. So with this image, Jesus can mean a few different things. First, he might mean medication. Salt was used in medicinal ways in the ancient world because it has antiseptic properties. It cleanses, it purifies. Even today in some Middle Eastern cultures, when a baby is born, the first thing they do once it comes out of the womb is they coat the baby in salt. Because if there's been any scratches or wounds, that salt will immediately sanitize those wounds and keep them from becoming infected. So Jesus could be talking about Christians have a purifying effect on the world around us. He could be talking about thirst creation. Salt obviously creates thirst. We know this well. Salt causes you to retain water. It's a known fact of the medical world. If your body does not expel salt in perspiration, your body retains water, becomes bloated and unhealthy. So Jesus could be saying that we are in the world to create a thirst that only he can satisfy. During the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles, every day, the priest walks from the temple in Jerusalem. He would walk to the pool of Siloam with a large container, fill it with water out of the pool, walk back to the temple, and pour the water over the altar. On the final day of the feast, he would do that 7 times. Go and get the water, haul it all the way back, dump it over the altar 7 times. On the 7th and final day of the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus said this in John 7:37. On the last day, at the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowds, "Anyone who is thirsty may come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink. For the scriptures declare rivers of living water will flow from his heart." So maybe our presence creates a thirst for which Jesus satisfies. Third, he could be meaning irritation. Salt is a natural irritant. If you get it in your eyes, if you get it in an open wound, you know it. You feel it. There's pain. The A.W. Pink notes that Jesus did not call us the sugar of the earth. He called us the salt. He said salt brings water to the eyes, not laughter to the lips. Now, is Jesus really calling us to be irritants in our world? Well, sort of. Not irritant in the sense that we are personally irritating to the people around us. But the fact of the matter is the message that we proclaim, the gospel of Jesus Christ, is naturally offensive. It is fundamentally abrasive. It is irritating to a lost and dying world. People don't like to hear that they're sinners. People don't like to hear that they can't save themselves, that they're not good enough to do so. People don't like to be told that you have to trust in Christ's finished work because all of your works are insufficient. It's irritating to hear that. Next, Jesus could be talking about preservation. This is before the days of refrigeration. The only way to preserve meat was to coat it in salt. It was the most common usage of salt in his day. Meat naturally rots. So if you want to hold the rot at bay, if you want to lengthen the life of the meat, you had to use salt. Plutarch, the Roman historian and philosopher, wrote that because salt keeps meat fresh, putting salt on it was like putting a new soul into a body. Now, by calling us salt, Jesus is making a clear declaration about our world. It is dying. It is rotting. Now, it might have signs of life at times, but it is spiritually dead and rotting. The Christian presence in the world holds the rot at bay and gives more time for the gospel to go to more people. 2 Peter 3:8. But you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord. 1,000 years is like a day. The Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some people think. No, he's being patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed. He wants everyone to repent. So our faithful presence allows that to take place. It holds off the rot. The gospel can go forth. Last, he could be talking about fertilization. Salt was used by farmers. When it was spread over a field, it aided the root system in absorbing water. So its presence in a field made that field more receptive to the crop and to the necessary nourishment. So Jesus could be teaching that our faithful presence in the world helps other people be more receptive to the gospel. For example, our church supports missionaries from an organization called Pioneer Bible Translators. And these faithful nerds, and I use that as a term of endearment, faithful nerds go into a culture and they learn the heart language of that culture. They then go to the ancient Greek scriptures and the ancient Hebrew scriptures and translate the Bible into that heart language. It's a beautiful work. But before they send in a translation team into a village, they send in a field team. That team's job is to serve the community, to meet the needs that they have, and to care for them in whatever way possible. That way, when the translation is finished, the people are far more receptive to the truth of the gospel because they've already seen what Christians are like. They've already experienced the faithful presence of believers in their community, and the stats are off the charts. People are far more open to truth when they've seen it lived out among believers. Now, whether Jesus is meaning one of those applications of salt or whether he's meaning all of them, the ultimate point is still the same. Christians have a transformative effect on the world in which they live. Your faithful presence among unbelievers makes an eternal difference. But with that comes a warning. Number 2, do not be conformed to the world. Notice the back half of verse 13. But what good is salt if it's lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It'll be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. Now, what is Jesus talking about? Jesus is not giving a chemistry lesson about salt and what it does. Sodium chloride, salt, is a stable compound. It does not lose its flavor on its own. Salt loses its saltiness when it gets diluted. When it's mixed with other elements, the distinctiveness of its flavor is lost. And then it can't be used for any of those purposes we talked about if it's mixed with other stuff. That's Jesus' point. Christian, you are to be distinct. You're to preserve the world against its continuing rot. But if you are compromised, you can't do that. If you are mixed in with the world, your purpose is lost. You can't be salt if you're not salty. Case in point. Over the last several decades, particularly in American Christianity, we have watched as churches all across the nation have caved in to liberal theology. In the name of being liked by the world, in the name of being relevant to the world, churches have watered down the gospel. They have edited and reinterpreted the Bible to fit with whatever their views may be. All of that to show the world how cool they are and how accepting they are. You know what happens to those churches? All of them are in decline. All of them. Entire denominations are in rapid decline. The very world that they hoped to attract is not attracted to a church that's just like them. Craig Blomberg put it this way: believers who fail to arrest corruption become worthless as agents of change and redemption. Christianity may make its peace with the world and avoid persecution, but it is thereby rendered impotent to fulfill its divinely ordained role. It will thus ultimately be rejected even by those with whom it has sought compromise. It doesn't work. Romans 12:2, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. Back to that verse in 2 Peter we read earlier about God is holding off. God is patient. He is holding off his return so that more people can come to the knowledge of who Jesus is and what he's done. Well, as we do that, as we're that faithful presence in the world, how are we supposed to live as we're waiting for God's countdown clock to run to zero? Let's go back. 2 Peter 3, we'll start again in verse 8. But you must not forget this one thing, dear friends. A day is like 1,000 years to the Lord. 1,000 years is like a day. The Lord isn't really being slow about his promise, as some people think. Now, he's being patient for your sake. He does not want anyone to be destroyed. He wants everyone to repent. But the day of the Lord will come as unexpectedly as a thief. Then the heavens will pass away with a terrible noise, and the very elements themselves will disappear in fire, and the earth and everything on it will be found to deserve judgment. Since everything around us is going to be destroyed like this, what holy and godly lives you should live, looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. On that day, he'll set the heavens on fire and the elements will melt away in the flames. But we're looking forward to the new heavens and new earth he has promised, a world filled with God's righteousness. As we live in the world, holiness and righteousness is to define us because we are to be distinct. Number 3, light. Shine brightly to be useful to the world. Shine brightly to be useful to the world. You are the light of the world, he says. Now, the image of salt implies that the world is dying. The image of light implies that the world is dark. And in the darkness of the world, you are to shine. Philippians 2:14. Do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Now, just as with salt, light has a number of purposes. Light brings health. One of the treatments for seasonal depression is light therapy. God has wired us to need light. Light brings life. God has designed that life on our planet is initiated by and empowered by the sun itself. Everything needs light. Light brings safety. Leaving lights on at your house while you're away or safety lights on at night, that dramatically decreases the likelihood of having safety issues at your home because light dispels dark behavior. But we're spoiled. We live in a culture that is inundated with light. It's everywhere. We aren't familiar with true, utter darkness. We have the technology. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But still, in parts of our world, you can be so far away from civilization that you can't see your hand in front of your face. Darkness still exists. This was normal for Jesus and the people of his day. This is the normal reality. No electricity, no lights on the roads, no lights on in the house after the fire goes out. It's complete darkness. So when he says, you are like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden, he meant it. You can't hide that. Now, that's likely a reference to the city of Jerusalem. It's built up on a high hill that towers over other cities. Again, there's no highway lights. There's no directional signs. You would be able to see the lights of the city for miles and miles around. It still happens even a bit today. If you drive down the interstate at night, you can tell when a city's coming because you see that orange glow out in the distance. It can guide you to the light. Friends, light guides the weary traveler home. This is what the Bible talks about. Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp to guide my feet, a light for my path. So when you live in a place of utter darkness and you can't see anything and you got to be carrying a lantern or a torch to light your way and not trip and fall, you've got a problem. Because if you carry a torch or a lamp up here, you can't see the path and you're in danger of tripping and falling. But if you want to light up the path, you got to bend over and stoop over and light that up. But now you can't see what's right in front of your face. It's this terrible dilemma. So they solved it by creating this fascinating little kind of lamp that attached to your feet. So as you walked, it lit up your path one step at a time. That's what Jesus is saying to us. The scriptures light up our path. They light up the way of life. We are the light that dispels the darkness in our world. We light the way home. We light up who Jesus is and how to find him. Danny Akin wrote, Christians are God's plan to stop death and stamp out darkness. That's our job description. Number 4, do not be useless for the world. This is the negative command that accompanies the glorious truth of you're the light of the world. The inherent truth that's in both images of salt and light is this: they are useless if they are not applied. Salt does no one any good if it stays in its container on a shelf. Light does no good if it's hidden away. Verse 15, no one lights a lamp, puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. People tend to keep matters of faith on a very personal level. And we understand that. You don't talk about religion and politics, right? That's the unspoken rule because that's how you upset people. Listen, your faith is absolutely personal. No doubt about that at all. And while it is personal, it is never private. Ever. It was never meant to be private. There are no secret Christians. We deny who we are as salt and light when we hide who we are. Salt that isn't applied is useless salt. Light that's hidden away is useless light. That's why the line is in the song, hide it under a bushel. No! Why? Because how stupid you would be to have light and then hide it. Nobody does that. You're supposed to let it shine. That's the point. That's what it naturally does. Now, notice that these two images come right on the heels of the Beatitudes. These 8 blessing statements that characterize God's people. Friends, if those really are the characteristics of God's kingdom people, you cannot live those out in secret. And if you try to live them out in secret, you will not be living them out. Those are put on display. And notice what he says in verse 16. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. Now, Ephesians 2:7 says that our lives are examples of the abundance of God's grace, so that in all future ages, God can point to us to declare to the world, do you see how gracious I am? Do you see how loving I am? I would forgive even them. Friends, we are on display. We are walking billboards that display the Lord's grace to the world. Now, that's not so that we get a bunch of attention, so that people would look at us and declare how awesome we are. That's never the point. Jesus will correct any misunderstanding of this in chapter 6. He'll come around and he will say, do not do your acts of righteousness to be seen by people. Those are for the Lord. Those aren't for attention for you. William Barclay put it this way, Christians never think of what they have done, but of what God has enabled them to do. They never seek to draw the eyes of others to themselves, but always to direct them to God. As long as people are thinking of the praise, the thanks, and the prestige which they will get for what they've done, they've not really even begun on the Christian way. The fact of the matter is this, if you live out the values of God's kingdom, you can't help but for that to be in public. You won't be able to stop people from noticing the difference in your life. That's the point. That's why we talk in seasons like we're in right now. We don't live characterized by fear. Our world is characterized by fear. You want to be light in the darkness? Don't live characterized by fear. You trust in a sovereign God. Live like it. It's supposed to be different. He's supposed to give peace that transcends understanding. Fear makes sense. Peace doesn't. It's noticeable when you're characterized by peace. He says, you are the salt of the earth. You're not the salt of heaven. You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. You're not the light of the church. You're the light of the world. Light only makes a difference in the dark. Salt only preserves that which is dying. Our role in the world is to point people to Jesus. James Montgomery Boyce said this, God uses the small things and the small people. God uses you and me that he might do his work in the world. As a matter of fact, the smaller you can become, the more effective his work in you will be. Do you know what we're to be? We're to be picture frames within which Jesus Christ is to be seen. God is not interested in it being a gold frame or a beautifully carved frame. He's just interested in it being an empty frame. Because he knows that when you come to him with that, he can put Christ there. And when people look at you, they'll see Jesus. Now, notice the contrast that Jesus offers here. If you live like this, people will see that and they will praise God for that. Now, didn't he just say in verses 10, 11, and 12 that people will persecute people like this? That doesn't sound the same, right? So here's the reality. Some people will see the winsomeness of your Christian life and they will reject it. And they will hate you for it. And they will mock you for it. And they will persecute you for it. They will dismiss you for it. Others, however, will see your faithful presence in the world, and they will be drawn to the Lord who saved you. 2 Corinthians 2:15. Our lives are like a Christ-like fragrance rising up to God. But this fragrance is perceived differently by those who are being saved and by those who are perishing. To those who are perishing, we are a dreadful smell of death and doom. But to those who are being saved, we are a life-giving perfume. And who is adequate for such a task as this? And who's adequate for that? None of us. But the Lord has changed us. The Lord has empowered us to be transforming salt in the earth. Him as the light of the world, John 8, lives within and causes us to shine brightly in the darkness. Ian Keith Falconer, which I think is the coolest name in the history of Christendom. Ian Keith Falconer was a Scottish missionary and an Arabic scholar who died at the age of 31. He had won the World Cycling Championship in 1878 at the age of 22. He was a rising star. And he left all of it behind to go to Egypt and later to Yemen as a missionary. After being married to his wife Gwendolyn for only 3 years, he died of malaria on the mission field. What is it in someone that would cause them to give up so much and give away so much? For him, it was a conviction that was buried deep in his soul. Here's what he wrote. I have but one candle of life to burn, and I would rather burn it out in a land filled with darkness than in a land flooded with light. It was true of him, it may be true of us. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, and the darkness will not overcome it. In a minute, I'm going to pray, and we're going to invite you to come and take communion. As soon as I'm done praying, volunteers are going to take the lids off, and it's going to be ready for you. So as you are ready, you feel free to make your way out of your seats and come up and take communion. As we always do, we double cup, so the juice is on top, the bread's in a cup on the bottom. And feel free to take that. And we would ask that you would take the communion while you're up here so you can throw your cups away in the trash so someone doesn't have to come through and pick those up. We think that's a bit safer for the time being. So again, when you're ready, come on up, take communion, throw it away, and we'll continue worshiping together. Let's pray. Father, there are times that you ask us to be the very thing we don't want to be. And there are times you ask us to do the very things that we don't want to do. Because it is much easier to blend in. It is much easier to go with the flow and to think how other people think and react how other people react and believe what other people believe. It's much easier. But that's deadly. We don't want to contribute to the dying. We want to preserve life. We don't want to contribute to the darkness. We want to be light. So we've got to open up our eyes in this crazy season we're in of how we can be salt and light, how we can love our neighbors the best way, the open door for ministry that's in front of us. Would you help us to see what that looks like? Give us wisdom in terms of how to help the people around us during this time. And for now, we are reminded with a little piece of bread and a cup of juice of the sacrificed body and shed blood of Jesus that proves your love for us, that by faith in Jesus saves us, forgives our sin, and grants us the hope of eternal life. And that because we would now then have a relationship with you, we are not afraid. Because you sit as sovereign ruler over all things. And we find incredible peace in that truth. Thank you for Jesus. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.